Hello, my beautiful Virgo. This reading feels deeply emotional to me, like someone is finally starting to understand just how deeply they've been feeling for you all along. They miss your energy. They miss the peace they felt around you. They miss the way everything once felt so light, so genuine, before fear and overthinking slowly pushed them into silence. It feels like they've been trying to keep their distance for a long time now. Not because they didn't care, but because you touched a part of them emotionally that they didn't really know how to face. And I think the most confusing part for them is this. The harder they try to forget this connection, the more they realize no one else has ever made them feel as safe or as emotionally at ease as you do. Some kinds of love don't arrive like an explosion. They're not loud. They don't come crashing in like a giant wave that changes everything overnight. They come slowly. Slow like the way someone starts missing a person after long days of working themselves into exhaustion. Slow like sitting alone in the car after work and suddenly thinking about a voice they haven't heard in a while. Or like opening your phone in the middle of endless notifications, but somehow only one person comes to mind. And honestly, I feel like that's exactly what's happening with this person. The energy of the Six of Cups feels very soft here. Not the kind of longing that's overwhelming, more like a quiet ache that's hard to explain. They miss your energy. They miss what it felt like to be around someone who never made them feel like they had to become somebody else. And the strange part is, I don't think they fully realized how important that feeling was before. It feels like this person has lived under pressure for a very long time. Pressure to stay stable. Pressure to keep everything under control. Pressure to always be logical, always busy, always strong. So when they met you, instead of immediately opening their heart, they instinctively pulled back. Not because you weren't important, but because you made them feel too much. And for someone who spent years hiding emotions behind work, behind packed schedules, behind phrases like, I've just been busy, or I'm focusing on myself right now, meeting someone who softens their heart a little can honestly feel scarier than loneliness itself. The energy of the Queen of Pentacles feels very Virgo here, very calm, very grounded, very emotionally mature. You feel like the kind of person who enters someone's life without trying too hard to impress them. You don't force people to love you. You don't create emotional chaos just to be noticed. You don't leave people constantly wondering where they stand with you. You simply exist. And sometimes, that kind of steady softness makes people realize just how exhausted they've become from relationships filled with uncertainty. I feel like this person is beginning to understand something now. What they've really been searching for all this time was never temporary excitement. Not connections that kept them emotionally guarded. Not love that constantly shifts between hot and cold. What they were truly missing was peace, the feeling of being emotionally safe beside someone. And maybe the painful part is, they only started seeing that clearly after distance entered the connection. This person may still be quiet lately. They still may not have fully expressed what's in their heart, but I don't see the energy of forgetting here. If anything, I see someone quietly replaying everything in their mind. The way you were always there so gently. The way you stayed patient with them even during moments when they couldn't even be patient with themselves. The feeling of safety they once treated as something ordinary until they stopped feeling it every day. The star feels like a distant light inside them, not blinding, not dramatic, just enough to make them realize that in the middle of all the chaos in their life, there was once someone who made it easier for them to breathe. And I think the hardest thing for them to face right now is realizing that some people don't enter your life to make everything louder. Some people arrive so your heart can finally feel safe. But sometimes, before someone can truly recognize the value of peace, they have to walk through a very long season of emotional exhaustion first. And honestly, I think this is exactly where this person is right now. It's not that they disappeared, and it's not really that they want to walk away from you either. It's just that some people, when emotions become too overwhelming, they go quiet, not the cold kind of silence. More like the silence of someone trying to put themselves back together, without really knowing where to begin. The energy of the Hermit feels incredibly strong here. It feels like this person has locked themselves inside a room full of thoughts. They still go to work. They still reply to a few messages. They still move through life like everything is normal. But inside, everything feels loud. Maybe they've spent so many years handling everything alone, so many years keeping emotions trapped inside their head instead of speaking them out loud, so many years analyzing every feeling until even their heart became exhausted from it. And Virgo energy can be like that sometimes. They try to understand emotions before they allow themselves to fully feel them. They search for logic inside things that are deeply emotional. They try to do everything right, to the point where they forget love doesn't always move like a perfectly organized plan. So when this connection started becoming deeper, I honestly think it scared them. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you made them feel seen in a way they weren't prepared for. There are nights this person barely sleeps well. Not always directly because of you, but because everything inside them is starting to collide all at once. Work pressure, long-term emotional exhaustion, old wounds they thought they had already healed from, and even the fear of becoming emotionally dependent on someone. The Nine of Swords carries such a heavy feeling here, like someone lying awake in the dark, while their mind keeps running even after their body is completely drained. They think about a lot. The things they never said, the moments they pulled away too quickly, the times they could have softened a little more, but chose silence instead, because they didn't know how to face what they were truly feeling. And I think the hardest part about people like this is that asking for help doesn't come naturally to them. They usually carry everything alone until their emotions become too heavy inside. So sometimes their silence can look cold from the outside, but internally, it feels much more like a private emotional battle. The moon feels like a layer of emotion, even they don't fully understand yet. There are days they miss you deeply, and then moments later, they question themselves for feeling that way at all. Sometimes they want to message you something simple, just one sentence, but then they delete it, because they're afraid they won't say it clearly enough, won't be enough, or won't know how to begin again after all this distance and silence. Honestly, this feels like someone who spent most of their life living inside their mind instead of inside their heart. And the saddest part is, they may not even realize how lonely they've become from always trying to stay strong. But somewhere inside this silence, something small is beginning to change. They're not running from their emotions as quickly as they used to. It's still slow. There's still hesitation. But for the first time in a long time, it feels like they're finally sitting with themselves long enough to understand what's been making their heart feel so tired. And sometimes, healing doesn't begin when somebody comes in to save you. Sometimes it begins the moment you stop pretending you're okay. Maybe that's why their energy feels different lately. Quieter, deeper, but also much more real. Because when someone finally starts facing the things they've avoided for so long, all those buried emotions eventually begin rising to the surface. And honestly, I don't even think this is the full depth of what this person is truly going through inside themselves yet. Because some changes don't happen loudly. Nobody notices them right away. There's no single moment where someone can point and say, yeah, this is where everything started changing. Usually, it begins with exhaustion. Exhaustion from shallow conversations. Exhaustion from constantly pretending to be okay. Exhaustion from relationships that always keep you emotionally guarded. And maybe the deepest exhaustion of all is the feeling of becoming a version of yourself that no longer even feels like you anymore. And honestly, I feel like this person is entering exactly that phase right now. Something about the way they see life lately feels different. The people they once tried so hard to hold on to don't really feel emotionally meaningful anymore. The habits that once helped them avoid their feelings now only leave them emptier at the end of the day. The energy of judgment feels like a very deep inner calling here. Not impulsive, not dramatic. More like someone slowly waking up after spending a long time living on emotional autopilot. They've started asking themselves things like, what exactly am I trying so hard to hold on to? And why do I feel this tired all the time? Virgo energy can endure almost anything. They adapt. They survive. They keep life functioning even while they're emotionally exhausted underneath it all. But sometimes, always trying to control everything makes them forget their own feelings need to be heard too. And honestly, I think you unintentionally awakened that realization inside them. Not through big speeches, not by trying to save them, but through the way you showed up so genuinely. You never forced them to change. You never tried to fix them. You never made them feel like they had to become perfect in order to deserve love. And somehow, that's exactly what made them start noticing the parts of themselves that have gone unhealed for far too long. The Tower carries a really powerful feeling here. It's like someone sitting quietly inside a room that once felt familiar, and suddenly realizing the walls around them aren't protecting them anymore. Old beliefs are slowly falling apart. The belief that silence is the safest option. The belief that if they don't get too attached, they won't get hurt. The belief that if they just stay busy enough, their emotions will eventually disappear on their own. But the more they try filling their life with work, responsibilities, control, the more they realize there are certain empty places inside them that can't be healed by staying busy. And honestly, I think the most confusing part for them right now is realizing you never really disappeared from their heart the way they thought you would. If anything, after all the distance, all the silence, all the times they tried pulling themselves away from this connection, your energy somehow became even clearer to them, not in an obsessive way. More like a very deep feeling that quietly stays with them, like a place they want to return to whenever their mind becomes too heavy. The energy of death doesn't feel like an ending here. It feels more like shedding old emotional armor, shedding the version of love that always came with fear of getting hurt, shedding the belief that they must control everything in order to feel safe. And honestly, that process is not easy. There are days this person feels completely lost. Things that once felt familiar don't comfort them anymore. People who used to feel close now feel emotionally distant. Even they don't fully understand sometimes why their emotions have changed so much. But healing can look like that sometimes. It's not always soft. Sometimes healing begins when the things you once used to hide your pain stop working. And for the first time in a very long time, I think this person is slowly stopping themselves from running away from their own heart. It's still slow. There's still hesitation. But deep down, they're beginning to realize that some connections don't come into your life to make things more complicated. Some connections appear to help you become more honest with your own emotions. And maybe that's also the moment they started looking at you completely differently than before. This no longer feels like the kind of emotion they can simply push aside anymore. And honestly, after all those long periods of inner silence, I feel like this person has started paying much closer attention to you in a very quiet way. Not obvious, not performative, but constant. Maybe they linger on one of your old posts a little longer than usual. Maybe they stop for a few extra seconds on a photo they once scrolled past too quickly. Or sometimes they'll notice something small during the day, and somehow your name crosses their mind right after. The energy of the Page of Swords feels very strong here. Like someone who doesn't say much, but notices every little shift. They notice how your energy feels different lately, the way you speak, the way you've become quieter, or maybe more emotionally mature after everything you've been through. And the interesting thing is, the more they observe you, the more they realize you were never really like anyone else. You never pulled them into emotional games. You never made them constantly question where they stood with you. There's a certain calmness about you. The kind of energy that makes people feel like they can breathe again. The Empress carries such a soft feeling here. You feel like the kind of person who doesn't even try to heal others, but somehow your presence makes people want to treat themselves more gently. And I think this person feels that very deeply, especially after going through so many connections where they always felt emotionally tense, like they had to survive inside them. Maybe at one point they thought love had to feel intense to matter, like it needed chaos or emotional extremes to be unforgettable. But the more emotionally mature they become, the more they're beginning to understand that the most valuable feeling in the world is actually very quiet. It's the feeling of being beside someone without needing to stay guarded, without pretending to be strong all the time, without hiding the most exhausted parts of yourself. And maybe the thing that hurts them the most now is realizing they didn't recognize the value of that peace sooner. Honestly, I think this person thinks about you during very ordinary moments. Driving alone, sitting in the middle of a lunch break with their mind completely somewhere else, waking up in the middle of the night when their phone lights up, and unconsciously hoping it's you. But Virgo energy usually doesn't admit feelings quickly. They observe first. They feel things deeply for a long time. They spend a long time convincing themselves internally before allowing themselves to move closer. So from the outside, it may look like nothing is happening at all, but internally, so much is slowly changing inside them. The King of Pentacles feels like someone starting to think more seriously about emotional stability, no longer wanting half-hearted connections, no longer wanting conversations that only exist to temporarily fill loneliness. I think this person has started asking themselves, if one day I truly want to build something lasting, who is the person that makes me feel safest emotionally? And honestly, I don't think the answer confuses them the way it used to. But at the same time, this realization also comes with hesitation, because the clearer they become about their feelings, the more they realize how important this connection actually is. And the things that matter most to people are usually the things they're most afraid to lose. So sometimes this person still feels split between two emotional spaces. One part of them wants to move closer, and another part is afraid they're not fully ready yet to stand in front of you as their most honest self. But honestly, I think the fact that they're no longer trying to deny their feelings anymore is already a huge change. And maybe the next thing this person has to learn is no longer how to run from emotions, but how to stay with them without making themselves afraid of love all over again. I feel like this is the moment where the energy between everything starts shifting very quietly. Not too fast, not dramatic like the love stories people usually talk about. It feels more like a door that's been closed for a very long time, slowly beginning to open just a little. Maybe this person still doesn't fully know the perfect thing to say. There's still hesitation inside them, but honestly, I don't think they want to keep holding this connection at a distance anymore. The energy of the Ace of Cups feels like a very calm emotional opening, not the kind of feeling that rushes in intensely and disappears overnight. More like a connection that's spent so much time in silence, finally becoming honest with itself. And honestly, I don't think this person is changing only because they miss you. I think they're starting to realize that after everything they've lived through, what their heart truly needed was never perfection, just a place where they could feel understood. Lately, I think they've been thinking more about the distance between you two, not in an overly calculated way, in a very human way. The kind of thoughts that sound like, if I keep staying silent, am I going to lose someone who actually matters to me? And for the first time, that question doesn't feel easy for them to ignore anymore. The Chariot carries the energy of someone slowly moving through their fears, not because they suddenly became fearless, but because they're exhausted from constantly running in circles around their own emotions. So instead of avoiding the truth, it feels like they're slowly trying to move closer to it, even if it's still slow, even if they still take a few steps back sometimes. The energy here no longer feels closed off. It feels open. And honestly, I feel like there may be a moment coming that seems very ordinary on the surface, but softens everything between you in a really deep way. Maybe it's a short conversation, a message after a long silence, a certain look, or maybe just the feeling that neither of you wants to keep pretending you don't care anymore. The Three of Cups feels very gentle here. Not like returning just to repeat the past, more like two people after a lot of emotional growth, starting to see each other differently than before. Less guarded, less focused on winning emotional battles, more honest about what their heart actually needs. And honestly, I think this person wants to repair a lot of things. Not only the distance between you two, but also the way they've handled their own emotions. Because when someone starts understanding themselves more deeply, they also start recognizing the ways they may have unintentionally hurt others. And Virgo energy usually doesn't express everything all at once. They show it slowly first. A little more care, a little more presence, a little more consistency, little by little. The energy of the Ten of Cups feels very peaceful at the end of this reading. Not in a everything is perfect kind of way. More like the peace that comes when you no longer feel the need to pretend. Being beside someone you can soften around, someone you can be tired around, someone you can be emotionally honest with, without feeling like you're too much. And honestly, after all the emotional cycles, the silence, and all the times they tried pulling themselves away from this connection, I think this person is beginning to understand something very deeply. Some people don't enter your life to make everything more chaotic. Some people arrive to remind you what peaceful love is supposed to feel like. And maybe that's the thing that's been changing their heart the most. It's not about grand promises. It's not about overly dramatic moments. It's the feeling of finally meeting someone who makes your soul stop feeling like it has to stay tense just to survive. And honestly, I think mature love doesn't always arrive to make your life instantly brighter. Sometimes it enters very quietly and slowly teaches you how to breathe again, how to sit with your own emotions without feeling so afraid of them. And maybe that's been the journey of this connection all along. From all those long stretches of overthinking to slowly realizing that not everyone who enters your life is there to hurt you more. Some people appear just to remind you what peaceful love actually feels like. And honestly, I really love the energy at the end of this reading. It doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't force immediate answers. It feels more like a very slow, very honest emotional unfolding after so much emotional protection inside two people. And maybe the most beautiful part of a connection isn't about how perfect everything looks. Maybe it's the moment two people finally stop running from their own hearts. And I wonder sometimes, have you ever met someone who made all the noise inside you go quiet just by being there? And if readings like this, soft, emotional, healing, feel familiar to your heart, then maybe you'll find yourself coming back here again sometime. But for now, just let these feelings settle for a little while. And if your heart has been carrying too much lately, I hope you find a place or a person that makes you feel a little lighter too.